"Don't touch those boxes, they're not yours," my cousin snapped, shoving me aside as movers hauled furniture out the door. Neighbors watched in silence. Then, sirens echoed down the street. My name is Lauren Mitchell. I'm 37 years old. I work as a records coordinator at a public school district, managing documentation and compliance for student files and administrative processes. 2 years ago, I moved back to my childhood home to care for my father during his final illness with lung cancer. I handled everything alone: bills, repairs, insurance claims, daily care that required patience and physical strength I didn't know I had. My family labeled me temporary help, someone filling a gap until the real family members could step in. My cousins lived out of state, busy with careers and lives that didn't include visits or phone calls, but they appeared immediately after the funeral to take control of everything. I live modestly, renting a small apartment when I'm not at Dad's house, and I value stability over drama. I avoid conflicts because I believed keeping the peace was what held families together. My relatives admired louder, wealthier family members who drove nice cars and took impressive vacations, not the one doing quiet work behind the scenes that nobody saw or appreciated. I sacrificed 2 separate job promotions that would have required relocating, choosing to stay close and support my father through treatments and hospital stays. I wasn't rich or glamorous, never demanded recognition or made grand gestures at family gatherings, but I had something they didn't expect. I kept meticulous records of every single payment I made, every repair I authorized, and every legal document tied to that house. If you've carried family responsibilities without getting any recognition, this is for you. If you've been overlooked despite doing all the real work, subscribe. Drop a comment if you've been pushed aside after someone you loved passed away. This message is for people who show up when nobody's watching. Subscribe, share your story, and click hype or like. The family gathering was framed as a memorial, a chance to celebrate Dad's life and share memories in the home he'd loved. I spent the morning cleaning and setting up chairs in the living room. My cousins arrived an hour early with a rental truck and 2 professional movers I'd never seen before. They didn't greet me or acknowledge my presence. They just started directing the movers toward furniture and boxes. "We need to empty the house before probate delays everything," my cousin Derek said, pointing at Dad's desk. I stood in the doorway, confused, watching them work. "What are you doing? We haven't even started probate." My cousin Amanda turned to me, her face tight with impatience. "You stayed here for convenience, Lauren. That doesn't make the house yours." Derek added, "We're the real heirs. This needs to be handled properly." Furniture moved past me: Dad's recliner, the dining table my grandmother had refurnished, tools from the garage. Neighbors stood on their porches across the street, watching the commotion with curious expressions. I noticed a printed distribution sheet on the kitchen counter and picked it up. My name was missing, completely absent. I tried to explain that I'd been paying property taxes and utilities for 2 years, that I had documentation of everything. Amanda waved her hand dismissively. "That was rent, basically. You lived here, so you contributed. That doesn't give you ownership." The public humiliation intensified when Mrs. Chen from next door walked over and asked if I was being evicted. I felt my face burn. Derek handed me a typed notice stating I needed to vacate the premises within 14 days. My hands shook as I read it. Then I noticed something on the truck company's paperwork, clipped to a manifest on the front seat. The estate authorization number looked wrong, too short, formatted incorrectly. I took a photo of it with my phone. The betrayals came fast and deliberate after that day. First, physical exclusion. I returned to the house the next morning to find the locks had been changed without notice. My belongings were boxed and stacked in the garage like unwanted storage. Childhood photos I'd hung back up after Dad died were removed from the walls and replaced with nothing. The house looked staged, empty, impersonal. Amanda met me at the door and didn't let me inside. "We're preparing the house for sale, Lauren. It needs to look neutral." I stood on the porch of the home I grew up in, locked out like a stranger. Second came the public narrative attack. Posts appeared on social media from extended family members about unnamed relatives who refused to leave property that didn't belong to them. The language was careful, never using my name, but everyone in the family knew. Co-workers at the school district started asking questions after someone shared a post that made its way through mutual connections. I saw people whispering near the copy machine. The family group chat I'd been part of for years suddenly showed an error message. I'd been removed. Third, document manipulation escalated. I checked online utility accounts and discovered they'd been backdated to show my cousins' names as account holders for the past year, erasing my payments. A property listing appeared on real estate websites without any probate filing or legal clearance. Photos of the house interior were staged professionally. Movers were scheduled for a final removal of remaining items, things my cousins hadn't taken in the first load. I felt something shift inside me during those days of humiliation and exclusion. The hurt didn't disappear, but it transformed into something colder and more controlled. I stopped trying to argue with them or explain myself. I started gathering evidence instead. Receipts from my files, bank statements showing automatic payments for 2 years, property tax confirmations with my name and account number. I built a detailed timeline of residency and financial responsibility. I chose silence publicly, letting them believe I'd accepted defeat and would disappear quietly. But I was working, methodically, with the same attention to detail I used managing school records. What my cousins didn't know, what they'd completely failed to consider, was that I had saved security camera footage from the doorbell system I'd installed for Dad's safety. The footage showed my cousins entering the house 3 days before the funeral, searching through Dad's desk and removing file folders I'd organized for legal purposes. I had emails between them from weeks earlier, messages I'd accidentally been copied on before they remembered to exclude me, proving they'd planned the furniture removal before they had any legal authority to do so. I had copies of every property tax payment made directly from my personal bank account, each one stamped with confirmation numbers and dates. I had a recorded voicemail Dad left me 8 months before he died, his voice weak but clear, saying the house would be mine and that I shouldn't let anyone push me around after he was gone. And I'd done something else. I filed a quiet police report about unauthorized removal of property from a residence where I was the documented resident and taxpayer. Not a dramatic confrontation, just a formal report with evidence attached. I had a plan they never saw coming. The person who helped me was my childhood friend Maya, someone I'd known since elementary school. She worked as a dispatcher for the local police department and happened to process my report when it came through the system. She called me that evening, her voice careful and professional. "Lauren, I saw your report. I need you to document absolutely everything. Photos, receipts, dates. And I'm flagging this truck permit number you provided." She explained that moving companies require legitimate authorization for estate property removal, and the number I'd photographed didn't match any registered estate case. Meanwhile, my cousins grew more arrogant with each passing day. Derek scheduled potential buyers to tour the house, posting about it on social media with comments about finally closing this chapter. Amanda discussed profit margins openly at a coffee shop where a mutual acquaintance overheard and told me later. They posted photos of the loaded rental truck with captions about handling family business. An open house was planned for the following weekend with professionally printed flyers distributed through the neighborhood. I stayed completely silent. I didn't respond to posts or argue with relatives who'd taken their side. I just continued collecting evidence, organizing it chronologically, preparing. The tension built as the final moving truck arrived to remove the last pieces of furniture, items my cousins had marked for storage or sale. Maya texted me that morning. "The permit number doesn't match any legal estate removal authorization. Keep your phone on." The moving truck was backing out of the driveway when police vehicles appeared, lights flashing, blocking the street. 2 patrol cars positioned themselves in front and behind the truck. Officers stepped out and approached the driver, who looked confused and slightly annoyed. One officer asked to see authorization paperwork. The driver handed over documents while my cousins emerged from the house, Derek's face already red with anger. I walked down from where I'd been standing at the neighbor's house and approached the scene. The street was full of neighbors now, watching from porches and driveways. I handed the lead officer my folder of documentation. Property tax payments spanning 2 years, utility bills in my name, residency confirmation from the post office, security camera footage on a USB drive, the police report I'd filed days earlier. The officer reviewed everything carefully. Derek stepped forward. "This is a family matter. She's trying to steal our inheritance." The officer looked up from the documents, his expression neutral. "Removing property without legal probate authorization is theft, sir. This residence has a documented resident who's been paying taxes and utilities." He gestured to another officer who opened the truck's cargo door. Neighbors craned their necks to see inside. Furniture, boxes, Dad's belongings stacked floor to ceiling. The officer turned to my cousins. "Do you have court authorization for this removal?" Amanda stammered something about family agreement. The officer held up the paperwork. "This authorization number is invalid. It doesn't match any registered estate case in the county system." Maya's earlier report had triggered an official incident record that showed up in the system when they ran the permit. The officer stated clearly that the property could not be removed without proper probate authorization and needed to be returned to the residents immediately. My cousins stood frozen, their confident expressions collapsing into shock and confusion. Derek tried to argue, but the officer cut him off. Authority had shifted completely, publicly, in front of everyone who'd watched them load the truck days before. I spoke then, my voice steady and cold. "You didn't inherit this house. You tried to empty it before anyone could stop you." The property was returned to the house over the next 2 hours, movers unloading everything under police supervision. The real estate listing was removed pending formal probate review. My cousins began distancing themselves from each other almost immediately, Derek blaming Amanda for the forged authorization number, Amanda claiming Derek had handled the paperwork. An official investigation was opened into the fraudulent documents they'd used. I resumed living in the house legally with proper documentation filed and police reports supporting my residency claim. I didn't pursue revenge or try to punish them beyond the natural consequences of their actions. I focused instead on preserving Dad's legacy, keeping the house maintained the way he would have wanted, honoring the trust he'd placed in me. I reflected often on the difference between showing up and being acknowledged, between doing the work and getting the credit. I learned that quiet responsibility doesn't need to shout or demand attention. Truth stands on its own when it's built on records, documentation, and evidence that can't be argued away. If you've been pushed out of a family home or denied inheritance you rightfully deserved, you know this pain. Share your story in the comments about relatives who tried to remove property or rewrite history after someone died. Let's build a community of people who stand firm with evidence and refuse to be erased. Documentation and calm persistence matter. Click hype to help this story reach others who desperately need to hear it. Standing up for yourself is tough, especially against family. If you've been there, subscribe and become part of our community. Let me know this story helped by clicking hype, and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel.